Hello everyone, I am Arslan Sheikh, uh, a research member of Human Security team at ITSS Verona. Welcome to our video podcast on climate, which will be focused on water security in South Asia. Today we have the privilege to have Professor Ashok Swain. Professor Ashok Swain is a professor and head of Department of Peace and Conflict Research. He is also the UNESCO Chair of International Water Cooperation and Director of the Research School of International Water Cooperation at Uppsala University Sweden. He is also the founding editor-in-chief of Environmental and Security Journal, jointly published by Sage Publishing and the Environmental Peace Building Association. Professor Ashok writes a weekly column, Right is Wrong, for Dubai-based Gulf News. He has worked as a consultant on environmental and development issues for various UN agencies like OCSC, NATO, EU, IIS, Arab League, Oxfam, and the governments of Sweden, Netherlands, the UK, and the Singapore. Professor Ashok, thank you for joining us today. It's a privilege to have you here.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to speak to you.
So today, if you may, we would like to talk about the water security and particularly focus on the South Asia region. So starting right away, if you could just touch upon the subject of water security, like what is water security and what are its challenges and what are its opportunities?
You see, the water security is a kind of a very not easy talk to define. And the thing is, there have been many people, those who come from non-security background, they do define water security very liberally, but also we need to realize the need for water varies from people to people, society to society. So I think there has been before many of the hydrologists, they have tried to say that this much of water is per capita needed for a country to feel water secure. I think that gives a very basic idea, but that is not exactly water security, because the reason is the water we need for many things. Of course, we need water for our survival, for our drinking, for preparing food and sanitation. Those are the basic needs, and those basic needs also varies from area to area. How much you need, that's 500 liter to 300 liters, depends on the areas we have. Then of course we do have different places, we do have our own pet cattle or whatever we have, and that's besides the water need. But the most important thing is what kind of economic activities we are engaged in. And that's where we need to see that whether a country or society is water secured or not. Like take, for example, countries like in the Gulf countries, they have, if you take the per capita water availability, they are hugely water insecure because they do have less than 500, maybe a couple of hundred what do you call the cubics of water per capita available. So the issue is that, but they are not water insecure because their economy is not dependent on agriculture. Agriculture consumes the highest amount of water. So if you are an agricultural economy, your water need will be much higher than if you are an industrial economy. If you are a tourist economy, that varies as well. Then also because the difference is that because also we need to look at it, that we are talking about the fresh water, isn't it? Because if we are the water, if we take the seawater, then we are in a very different position. Imagine if we know how to desalinize the water in a cheaper, faster, and sustainable manner, then people like anyone who is living in the southern part of India will be much more water secure than Kashmir, because they do have access to the sea. So The problem is, of course, we have now technology to desalinize the water, but that is quite expensive. Also, it is not environmentally very friendly. You need investment, you need technology, you need resources, and it is still much more expensive than to use for agricultural purposes. But if you are using it for, like, the Gulf countries, they do have resources, or the southern part of United States, southern part of Europe, Singapore. I mean, there are countries where also they can do the desalinize the water, and they can use it for their municipal purposes and industrial purposes possible. And then the pollution also creates insecurity, water insecurity. But then pollution is that if you have a pollution, of course, European countries where if you go back to 50, 60 years, then the European waters, river waters, were absolutely unused for. But then they could really spend the resources, came together, they had the technology that cleaned the water up. So you have a possibility to do that. So pollution is easier to settle. So I don't have a very clear-cut answer what is water security, because it is much more comparative manner depending on where we are, what kind of economic strength we have, what sort of energy sources we do have, and what kind of economic activities we are engaged in. In South Asia, when you come to South Asia, it also, mostly South Asia is agricultural. Most of the part of South Asia is agricultural. South Asia has still, I mean, if you look at the country, among the countries, probably, forget about Maldives. Maldives is a very small country. It's an island. It doesn't have much, per capita water resources much low. But the Pakistan is one of the highly water scarce country, because Pakistan is, I consider it's Egypt of Asia. Means it's highly dependent on the water which is coming from the upstream, and also dependent on the irrigation water for its agricultural purposes. But India is getting water insecure, but India has a per capita water availability quite high. Nepal is much higher, Bhutan is much higher, Bangladesh is also quite high. But depend on also how they manage it, because it's not that the water availability is there, whether the water can manage, water can give to the people, that's also varies. Like, take for example, if you look at the sub-Saharan Africa, in sub-Saharan Africa, there is no dearth of water. Forget about the Southern Africa, but the rest of the sub-Saharan Africa, quite a lot of water. But the water doesn't reach to the people. So this is where you need, infrastructure, you need the resources, you need the political willingness, and then coming together and how to develop it. So South Asia is in general continues to be, if you look at the per capita water availability, it's still water secure, but it has been highly water insecure for a long period of time. I mean, because we haven't really able to manage the water well.
Right.
Sorry for my long explanation.
No, it was like I really hope that you kept going on, because it was very informative and very insightful. So what I could gather is that unlike food security, which is like if we have evidence of food, then we have food security. But with the case of water, it's like too little water is also risky, too much water is also a threat to water security, and too dirty water is also a threat to water security. So if I could follow up you on the previous, that like you talked about South Asia. So we see every year during monsoons there is lots of loss of lives, property, livelihoods in South Asia, particularly in South Asia, because of the monsoons. So apart from monsoons, like, what major threats or vulnerabilities do you see in the water security of South Asia?
You see, South Asia, as I mentioned, is quite prone to mismanagement of water for a long period of time. And it has been mismanaged, way the things have been unsustainably developed. We have a huge population growth in all over South Asia. Then also there has been never taken the water as a unit where we can really cooperate as a basin, but rather we have looked at it much more within the country, state specific, or even in the region, that country specific. So we have been failed to cooperate in many times on that one as a like take for example, of course. I mean, we did a study recently last year for the Oxfam on the cost of non-cooperation in Ganges Brahmaputra basin, and making a very conservative calculation. And I say conservative calculation, and only the cost, not the benefit. Then at least 14.2 billion dollar the countries are losing out every year for not cooperating. So there is a lack of cooperation exists among the countries. I'll give you an example. What is happening now? You see the for the last week or so, the northern part of India is heavily flooded. The states like Himachal Pradesh and Uttarakhand, they are, and also Punjab, they were quite affected with the heavy flood. In Indian side, we saw the hotels were collapsing near the, and now the water has reached part of half of the Delhi has been also. I mean, I studied in Delhi. I have been living in Delhi for some time. I used to live in Delhi for some time. So the kind of, I have never seen that the flood, flood water reaching half of Delhi. I mean, and then that had never happened. So I think it's a somehow, if we go back just 10 months back, this was exactly the same scenario was repeating in Pakistan. The western side of the Indus Basin, they had the massive flood. Pakistan is witnessing the flood since 2010, quite big way. Of course, when I mean, you see the three western flowing rivers, the massive flood last year in the Pakistan side, the eastern flowing rivers of Indus Basin, the Indian side this time. And the question comes that this kind of things which goes on, we start discussing what exactly. Of course, we say climate change is one of the things, but the climate, with the climate change, you see then this comes corruption. It says the bad planning, the political interference, you name it. Those things which then, but those things, if you look at it, the South Asia was never free from corruption, never free from bad planning, never free from political interference. So those things were there all the time. And then, of course, there were also floods before. I'm not saying the floods are new, but why the floods are becoming so severe than before? Of course, you can argue that there have been more areas been concretized, more flood plains have been occupied, but saying that, also we are witnessing what we witnessed in Pakistan last year, and this time in the Indian part with this, that only a short period of time, the amount of rainfall comes, that is the kind of rainfall we had never seen before. So it's the massive amount of rainfall falling from sky in a very short period of time, which is the change, which is the major change has brought into this kind of the flood situation, which we are seeing unprecedented flood. So I think, and that is the place we need to. I'm no way denying that the idea of behind it, that the political interference, the corruption, the lack of or the bad planning or the lack of good planning, those things are there. But the massive amount of unusual rainfall in a short period of time, which we must realize that is because of the global warming and climate change. So that has made much more complicated the water, both in the flood and the drought season. And this is the time when you expect the countries need to come together. Countries need to work together. And particularly in the Indus Basin. I was talking about the Ganges Brahmaputra Basin, the other side, but the Indus Basin. And I was mentioning the three sides getting the flood last year, three other sides getting the flood this year. They do have an agreement, 1962 agreement, which is it's 1962, yeah, the 1960,
1960
Indus
Indus Water
Water
Treaty. Yes, yes.
Indus Act. Nowadays, I'm confused with China War. So 1960 Indus Agreement. But look at this. It is there, but the agreement is, as I consider, is not a water agreement. It's a partition agreement. 3 rivers have been given to Pakistan, 3 rivers given to India. There is no cooperation among these places. There is a Kashmir, Indian administered Kashmir, which has a huge potential to create greater storage facilities, create a large amount of hydropower to control the water during the flood season, which is going into the down south in Pakistan, and also to in the summertime or the dry season time to release the water, rather than. But that why it's not happening, because there is a huge lack of trust between the countries. Not only India and Pakistan, there is also lack of trust between China and India in the Ganges Brahmaputra Basin to Indus Basin. There is a between India and Nepal. There is a used to be a little bit trust between India and Bhutan, and that is not working well. They have signed an agreement 96 between India and Bangladesh over the Ganges. Is the agreement coming to an end in 3 years? And we will not know what will happen in the Ganges side. So I think it's the real problem is taking place in this part of in South Asia, is that we are moving into a time which has brought a huge uncertainty about the water supply and demand due to climate change, and besides other complications, as I have mentioned, and we all know. But the countries are not coming together to work out that this is the thing which no single country can really address these issues, this kind of uncertainty alone. So this is where happening in the regional level, also within the provinces, like Pakistan has the different province fight, the Sindh, Punjab, Balochistan, they do have the northwest frontiers, they have their own fights. In India, you name it, there are hundreds of conflicts going on within the provinces. They have fights. So there is, and also you will see the similar type of things going on between Nepal, the hillside to the Tarai side, similar things going on in the Bangladesh. So we do have internal areas of also. So I think it's a basically, I find it that it's a lack of political will, which is and that has led to the lack, absence of trust between the countries. So this is the time when they need to come together if they really want to find certain kind of better way of addressing the water issue, considering the climate change threat has come in.
Absolutely. Like you rightly mentioned about the lack of will to cooperate over the water, which is making this water security threats more complicated and intricate. So, which you have also very thoughtfully written in the chapter, the cost of non-cooperation in a book in Islam. So yes, it is definitely a major vulnerability in this, like the cost of non-cooperation. So like we are I'm really sorry that we have very limited time because of the Zoom. So my final question would be like, what approach could, like, you have briefly touched upon this in the previous question, so sorry for asking it again, but particularly regarding the South Asia, what approach could state and non-state actors take, like, together for ensuring water security in this region?
You see, this is some things which was let me go very quickly. The problem has been, let's divide these two parts, the eastern side and the western side. In the eastern side, in the Ganges-Brahmaputra side, the China was never been a major actor or major, though it supplies most of the water, particularly the Brahmaputra water, heirloom, which they call it, but it was never. But now it has been developing a number of dams there. So in the Ganges-Brahmaputra side, India used to be the dominant actor, okay? But now China is become coming and China is demanding its place, and China is a much powerful actor. So in this case, either the India needs to work together with China, or at least India needs to be working together with Nepal, Bhutan, and Bangladesh to come at least to some kind of lower Ganges basin organizations, which like in the lower Mekong, in the Mekong River cooperation wise. So this is where it needs to come. The civil society has a lot of actions, a lot of contributions to do. But I think what happens, there is a number of civil society activism going on. There has been a number of track to talk on the water issue. I have been part of it. I have seen it. This is not new. This is going on. But the real problem is that we are not able to convince the political leadership that this is the most needed, and they need to work together rather than politicizing the water. Once you keep politicizing the water, then it is not going to help out. In the Indus side, the similar problem is that, anyone knows about the India-Pakistan relationship. It's much more complicated. It has been part of the conflict, but also now we need to realize Afghanistan has started developing its water resources in the western front. It has created conflicts in the recent weeks, recent months in the Iran, with the Uzbekistan, with the in the Amudarya basin, you name it. So this is happening, and the Afghanistan has also the tributaries of Indus. So this will soon come to the. There have been before plans with the Americans and Indians were having plans when the Afghanistan was a pre-Taliban era, but now Afghanistan will try to develop that water. So Pakistan must need to also be. And China has also started developing a little bit of water in the upstream because it has a small dams in the Sutlej and also the Indus upstream. But the China doesn't have that much of control on the Indus. And of course, the Kashmiri issue makes it much more complicated in that sense. So I think it is somehow they need to, as I've been talking about it, they cannot really address the way water is becoming scarce, more demand is taking place. And the most important thing is the business as usual cannot be because of the climate change. The kind of water availability taking place in a short period of time, they need to come together to build more storage facilities, create areas where they can cooperate those things. But that is for that, you need to have to desecuritize the water and depoliticize the water. But and that they can only desecuritize, depoliticize can only take place when the politicians or the political leadership really want to do that. Without that, I don't see the kind of things which as a region to come together to address the water scarcity issue in the region. And it is going to be much more problematic in the we are not talking about, it has already become extremely problematic, and this is going to be much worse. And this is not, it's not to be a rocket scientist to see this. Anyone can witness, anyone can see this, that they have to cooperate. They have to think long term. They don't have to only think in their own power at the present time.
Right, John. This is a very important point that this issue needs to be depoliticized and desecuritized, because securitization of this issue might make it another come it in the umbrella of national security and maybe used as a weapon or something. So these 2 points are very, very important.
It is being used as a weapon, and it is being. You know that this is in the Indus basin. It is being used often as a weapon, and that should not be, because this is something is a resource which is common resource of the region, common resource needs to be used in a much more cooperative rather than in an individual manner.
Exactly. Well, I really wish I could go on and take this conversation further, but we are constrained by our time limit and also the Zoom duration. So Professor Ashok Swain, it was really an honor having you you enlighten us a lot on this issue, on the subject matter of water security in South Asia. We hope to take this discussion further on some other time if you allow us. So, but I'm afraid we have to end this podcast now. And it was an honor to have you here, and thanks a lot for your invitation and being here. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you.